video, FAP, and some others will be joining us as we continue. We also have on board our facilitator, Mr. Henry Minor. We also have on board our executive director, Mr. Franklin Mukwanja from here at the Center for Multi-Party Democracy, and also representatives from the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties. So without so much further ado, I'll kindly go through the opening, not opening remarks. I'll just go through the presentations so that we can actually have every member introduce themselves. So once I call your name, kindly unmute, say a quick hello, and then mute back so that we don't interfere with a connection. So to start us off, I'm going to call Dr. Haji. Kindly unmute and say hello to everyone.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning. Thank you, Dr. Haji. We move on to Nicholas Melly. Nicholas, can we unmute and say hello?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Kindly say your name, and the party where you come from, so that we can get to know each other.
My name is Nicholas Melly, representing ANC. I'm the administrator at the ANC party.
Thank you so much, Melly, and welcome on board. We have Doreen. Doreen, kindly unmute, say hello. Doreen Otunga, if you can get me. I'll come back to her. We move on to Miss Grace. Miss Grace Osindo, kindly unmute and say hello to everyone.
Hi, everyone. My name is Grace Osinde. I represent Frontierlands Party. I'm the second youth leader, the second assistant youth leader. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much and welcome on board. Kindly mute. We go to Hannah and Joki. Hannah, kindly unmute and say hello to everyone.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hannah, youth leader from Forum, and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much, Hannah. We move on to Honorable Albert Koche. Mheshimiwa, kindly unmute, say hello, and tell us your chama, if you can hear me.
Very well. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Yeah, my name is Albert Koche. I am the Director of Elections of Chama cha Mashinani, CCM Party. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Kindly mute and welcome on board. We move on to John Emoite. John, kindly unmute and say hello.
Good morning, everyone. My name is John Emoite. I'm the National Chairman, Kenya National Congress. Asante.
Thank you so much and welcome on board. We go to Kabala. Kabala, kindly unmute and say hello.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Kabala, we can hear you.
Yes, Kabala Kile, representing Nakenya, Deputy Chair Nakenya.
Thank you so much, Kabala, and welcome on board. We go to Mr. Kiplangat Bet. Bet, kindly unmute if you can hear me and say hello. Bet? Maybe we'll come back to Bet later. We can now move on to Lilian Anyango. Lilian, kindly unmute and say hello to everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hi, and how are you?
We good?
Good morning, Maureen. Can you hear me?
Yes, Lilian, I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much.
Yes, I'm glad to be here. My name is Lilian Anyango, KNC, Women League Leader.
Thank you, Lilian, and welcome on board. Kindly mute your mic. We go to Miss Millicent Abutho. Millicent, kindly unmute and say hello.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Millicent.
I'm Millicent Abutho for Kenya, Secretary General for Kenya.
Thank you so much, Millicent, and welcome on board. We now move on.
Hey, you can hear me?
Yes, we can clearly hear you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Move on to Nahashon. Nahashon, kindly unmute and say hello to everyone. Nahashon, if you can hear me. Okay, I don't think we have him. We move on to Nasra. Nasra, kindly unmute and say hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Nasra.
My name is Nasra Hilo, Youth Representative EFP Party.
Thank you so much, Nasra, and welcome on board. We go to Nathaniel. Nathaniel, kindly unmute and say hello.
Good morning, everyone, and good morning to you, Maureen. My name is Nathaniel. I'm from the ANC party, and I'm the spokesperson of the ANC Youth League. I'm glad to join this meeting. Looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nathaniel. We're happy to have you on board. We go now back to Nahashon. Nahashon, kindly.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
I've already unmuted. Hey, my name is Nashon from Wiper Democratic Movement. I am their coordinator, and they also called me their chief advisor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nahashon. Kindly unmute mute your mic after this. We now move to Nicholas Melly. Nicholas, kindly unmute and say hello.
I said hello, but let me say again.
Then we can just move on. We have someone logged in as Oppo A5S. Kindly.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Okay, my name is Demtila Gwalawerimo. Are you hearing me?
Yes,
Are you
yes,
hearing me?
yes, we can get you, Demtila.
My name is Demtila from Frontier Alliance Party. I represent youth.
Thank you so much, and welcome on board. We now move to, thank you. Perpetua, kindly unmute and say hello.
Hello, everyone. My name is Perpetua Mponjiwa. I'm an assistant to the ODM Women League President, Madam Beth Siengo. Pleasure is all mine. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Perpetua, and welcome on board. We now move to Rosa Wangu. Rosa, kindly unmute and say hello.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rosa Wangu, representing the Kenya Party.
Thank you, Rosa, and welcome on board. Ruth Bolo, kindly unmute and say hello.
Hi, Maureen, I had a feeling you'd call me after Rosa, but hi, everyone. Ruth Bolo is my name. I am a member of Secretariat as a Programs Officer for the Party of Independence, KANU Party.
Thank you so much, Ruth. We now move to Sarah. Sarah, kindly unmute and say hello to everyone.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sahara Rashid, a Women League leader, EFP Party. I'm humbled to be here.
We're glad to have you on board. We now move to Sela Opia. Sela, kindly unmute and say hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
My name is Sela from Forum. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Sela, and welcome on board. We now move to Mr. Stephen Namusule. Namusule, if you can hear me.
Yes, I do. Jambo wote.
Jambo.
This is Namushule, Executive Director for the Kenya.
Thank you so much and welcome on board. We now welcome Tony Muturi. Tony, kindly unmute and say hello.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Tony Muturi is my name, legal officer ODM.
Thank you so much, Tony. And let me take this opportunity to welcome everyone on board. I hope I haven't forgotten anyone else except our executive director, Mr. Franklin Mukwanja, and our facilitator today, Mr. Henry Maina. If I've forgotten you, kindly just raise up your hand on the chat box and I will quickly call your name. So without so much further ado, let me just welcome our executive director, Mr. Franklin Mukwanja, to just give us the opening remarks, and then we'll continue now with the presentation. Thank you so much. Franklin.
Thank you, Maureen. You can hear me, all of you?
Yes, yes.
Very clear.
Thank you. And then I realized that my friend Felix and my brother, sorry, didn't have an opportunity to introduce themselves, but I can note your presence. So please feel very much welcome to this meeting. This meeting is going to focus on the political parties and particularly the protocols for political parties to continue operating under the very challenging times of the COVID-19 pandemic. It's work that the leadership of CMD has sanctioned, that we work on it from the AGM. You recall that there were draft regulations, protocols that the Secretariat submitted, and that agenda remained pending for further discussions. We have also reached out to the Office of the Register of Political Parties, which I think has a representation here, if I am not wrong, Mr. Abdurrahman Abdullahi, right, representing the Office of the Register of Political Parties, because we acknowledge the importance of closely working together with the registrar to ensure that the work of political parties continue. I need not to belabor the point on the challenges that we're experiencing under these circumstances of the COVID-19 pandemic. But the question is, what is our role as CMD? What is the role of the Register of Political Parties? I think the critical point to mention here is that political parties are critical in a democracy like ours. And therefore, their ability to organize, their ability to mobilize, their ability to continue persuading the populace on various issues is critical. But you realize that under the current circumstances, we need to work to strike a very delicate balance between protecting public health and safeguarding the democratic and civic space. I also don't need to go into details, but we are Kenyans. We have lately, since March, we have seen, unwarranted actions from various corners where some politicians of particular persuasion can meet and freely engage, while the others are bad. And I think that this affects the leveling of the ground to be able to really popularize political ideas that all of us have. So we are trying through these protocols to ensure that we're not just leveling the ground for fair engagement, but also ensuring that we strike a delicate balance between protecting public health and ensuring that we safeguard and protect the democratic and civic space which political parties require to operate normally. Secondly is that we headed into the 2023 general elections. You are the party leaders and party workers. You know very well, and the registrar's office is represented here. You know very well that there are compliance issues. The parties need to organize, need to mobilize, need to meet at both local and national levels so that they can be able to comply and be the public institutions that the law sets out for them to be, so that then they can be the critical players that they should be in the general elections. This requires a clear protocols, clear guidelines on how the parties should organize, on how the parties should mobilize, and how they should meet, under what conditions, and where, and all these things need to be put in place so that we do what I am emphasizing, protecting public health while safeguarding democratic and civic space. Finally, the ongoing governance reform discourse. My dear colleagues, you will appreciate that whether you are for or against, or you are in between the conversation that is going on, you still need to organize, you still need to mobilize, you still need to meet and persuade each other. And that is what a political democracy is. So the question that we are trying to grapple here in partnership with the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties, with you as individual political parties, is how do we not allow the challenges that we are going through, and we never know when COVID is going to be completely away. IEBC has already come up with some guidelines in regard to elections. Before elections, political parties need to engage in some level of organization, of mobilizing, of meeting to discuss these issues. So how do we do that without aggravating the situation? How do we not let COVID-19 be a stumbling block to the operations of political parties? And this is what we're working with. We want to seek this partnership. We want to work closely with individual political parties. We want to work with the register of political parties to move this process forward so that the church is organized, their members are meeting. What about political parties? Can we be able to meet with the necessary corporate and social decorum and transact our business well? So the draft is going to be presented today by the resource person that has helped us to piece it together. And this is basically a public participation phase. We will be continuing conversation with the registrar's office, move this into the relevant ministries, interior and health, make sure that they are adopted so that you know when you want to meet, you have clear protocols, and as long as you have you are implementing them, no one will be giving you trouble when you want to have yourself organized and interact with your constituents. So this is the purpose of this meeting. This is not the only meeting. We're going to have a series of them, as I've mentioned, including the registrar, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Interior, to make sure that what is being presented is actually the views of the stakeholders who are yourselves. So thank you very much. With those very many remarks, I get it back to Maureen to continue moderating the session. Thank you very much and wish you very fruitful discussions.
Thank you so much, Frank, for those remarks. Now we move on to our next activity, which will have our consultant, Mr. Henry Maina, to present. Henry, if you can hear me, kindly mute.
Yes, you want me to mute?
Yes, there's a lot of background noise coming from your side. As Henry works on it, let me just give this opportunity to Mr. Abdulrahman and Corel Lydia and Felix Mambo to kindly say hello quickly as we get Mr. Henry back. Abdulrahman, if you can hear me, kindly unmute and say hello to everyone.
Hi, morning everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
My name is Abdulrahman Abdullahi. I'm from the Register of Political Parties. And the guidelines and protocols developed by CMD would not have been timely at this time because of the ravaging pandemic in the country and the world at large. But even if there's the coronavirus, political activities have to continue because one, there's a possibility of a referendum next year. That's a hypothetical situation for now. But as we know, in 2 years' time, we'll be having a general election. And politicians will want to align and present themselves to the populace so that they can sell their agenda and ideas. So I'm looking forward to this meeting. And I hope the political parties will take this initiative and try to implement them as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abdulrahman. Now we move on to, kindly mute your mic. We'll now move to Lydia. Lydia, kindly unmute and say hello. Lydia, if you can hear me. Okay, we don't seem to have Lydia. Felix Mambo.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Felix Mambo. I'm representing Wiper Party. Thank you.
Thank you, Felix, and welcome on board. Benjamin Gisore.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Jambo.
This is Benjamin Gisore, Congress. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Benjamin. Now, if I can kindly ask all of us to just mute our mics so that we don't interfere with the presentation from Mr. Henry Maina. Henry, if you can hear me, and if you're ready, you can now take over the presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Maureen. I hope that the noise at the background has been managed.
Yes.
If it continues to be problematic, then please let me know. My name is Henry Maina. I'm not a member of any big political party, and neither am I a COVID expert. So sometimes I oscillate between two things. I'm a critic of governance and a student of governance and law. So perhaps it's for that reason that I was asked to try and develop these guidelines and protocols to help us move this process. So I'm also using this opportunity to learn because, as you and me know, there is nobody who is a COVID expert within the world. This is unfolding on our eyes. So we just have to learn what can we do with the knowledge we have. The starting point for these guidelines, I think, is for us to understand that the situation from March 13th, when the first COVID case was declared in Kenya, to today, the situation was at a certain point, I think 2 or 3 months ago, we thought we were managing, but it has deteriorated towards the wrong side. As we speak, yesterday alone, over 1,456 people tested positive. And that was on a sample size of 10,146, meaning that the prevalence rate in the population that was sampled was about 14%. Yet, for normalcy to be there, we were expected to be operating below perhaps 10% consistently for 14 days. So on average, Kenya has about 74,145 confirmed COVID-19 cases. And this is from a population of about 815,000. Recoveries have been about 68% of those people, and deaths have been about 2% or 1.79. So it is a problem. And I think one of the challenges that existed was that we still have people within our ranks, especially political leaders, who are saying that COVID does not exist. It was a hoax by the government to make money. So one of the things that these guidelines seek to do is to remind us that COVID is a reality and it's here. And they seek to help us to address two things. One, to address us on how we may be able to continuously engage in meetings, barazas, and rallies externally, but understanding how best to mitigate the community transmission that may emanate from our gatherings. But two, how to manage our own internal working environment, because some of us are working in the secretariats. What can we do within our own secretariats to ensure that our working spaces are not sites for community transmission? So the policy guidelines was developed some few months ago. Ideally, it was out in September, early September. So we are slightly late. But at that time, Franklin spoke to what was obtaining in the country. It seemed unclear when will certain political party meetings be allowed and when will others not be allowed. We seemed to have a situation where there was selective application of the law. Certain people would be allowed to hold meetings and others would be clobbered that they are breaking the law. So one of the things that these guidelines sought to do is to help level the field so that we all know if there are meetings, this is what is going to be expected of us. The guidelines are organized in 10 small parts, and I would not be going through every part because some we've already had sufficient thinking around them for us to just understand. But the introduction part is to point out that the guidelines are complementary protocols. So they do not replace the national protocols that were issued by the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Interior. They only complement those guidelines to ensure that we do not continue to have that discriminatory and selective application of the guidelines that were issued earlier. But two, it's also to help government and political parties to establish a minimum and objective standard that must be observed by all political actors as they seek to re-engage with the wider population amidst this COVID-19 pandemic. So if we understand that those are the two main roles, and we want to perhaps just reiterate that we want to be able to see all of us as political party actors owning the guidelines so that we don't end up again with a guideline which we say those ones were passed to restrict our operations. We understand that freedom of association and assembly are not absolute rights and they can be limited. But the limitation must be necessary in a democracy. The limitation must be legitimate in a democracy, and the restriction must be proportionate to the interests that it seeks to protect. So three things when you are limiting the right to freedom of association and assembly is that they must be necessary in a democracy. They must be legitimate, meaning that they must be passed in a law and a law that has gone through the rigor of any democratic lawmaking process. And three, that they must be proportionate. If you wanted to ensure that people have masks, why beat them up and lock them up instead of perhaps just ensuring that they have masks? So what action are we taking, and is it proportionate to the interest that we seek to propagate? The second part of these guidelines is to point out the role of political leaders in fighting COVID. And this is because politicians enjoy huge following and people depend on them for direction and guidance in the face of adversity. So I have spoken about this issue where you have political party leaders or politicians in a way spreading disinformation and misinformation that COVID does not exist and it was just an invention to allow the government of the time to get some money so that they can misappropriate it. These are discussions that have been held by some of our leaders, and in them is a misgiving that then perhaps causes more problems as we even try to mitigate against the pandemic. Secondly, if the ruling class told people that there really is no danger in not putting on a mask while in public places, then there's likely to be a situation where people walk around without face masks on because they take it that the political class make their own pronouncements from an informed point of view. So we've seen very many politicians moving around without masks, speaking to people closely, and that has an effect because it negates the efforts that we have gotten into. So the central role of political parties is reiterated in the guidelines, and we are then expected to lead from the front, preventing community spread and transmission, and mitigating other related risks by coming up with policies that help in managing the situation. The third, perhaps important thing is we had just come from what was near a lockdown or a ban on public meetings, and we had a situation where there was a formal return for political rallies, but there wasn't sufficient guidance. And apart from the political rallies and political gatherings, we now have those what most people are calling impromptu sessions. Leaders are going to Machakos and they decide to stop in Mavoko, in Mlolongo, or they are going somewhere and they decide to stop by a Karatina market. They are deciding to attend a funeral and they stop by a Sabatia market in Butere. All those situations end up with a few cases, a few spikes of COVID-19 cases. So yes, leaders are expected to meet their people and mobilize and reorganize as Franklin indicated, but should we take any extra steps in thinking through that process? So understanding that background, we have come up with certain core principles in subsection 1(2) of the guidelines, core principles for mass gatherings and political rallies, which we thought that if well thought through, they can begin to help so that everybody understands what is the minimum expected of them as they engage with that process. And one of those areas is that even though mass gathering and political rallies are convened for a range of purposes and relevant guidance on specific activities is signpost, there is need that for all political gatherings, there must be a person who is in charge. If it's in a stadia, if it's in a public recreational center, or it's in a social hall, there must be somebody who is in charge, and that person has a responsibility to try and ensure that there are reasonable hand washing safe facilities, that we can be able to register people coming in, and this would help us in tracing, that we can also organize about social distancing. I think the biggest challenge for political gatherings is the issue of social distancing. And we must then ask ourselves, should politicians be restricted to do their meetings only in stadia where you can control the population, or in social halls, or should we continue to have them in markets where social distancing becomes impossible and then there is an explosion? Because the situation is getting terrible as we speak. So even as we do that, then what the policy is requiring, that was there a COVID-19 risk assessment done prior to the meeting? How are we going to manage the social distancing issues? Or do we just think and behave like COVID-19 does not exist and have our meetings go on? Should politicians decide to hire venues, what are their minders and administrators doing? I had a few of us indicate that we are administrators or we are executives, like Stephen Namsule. What do we do when we are the ones organizing the meeting? Do we brief our heads on what needs to be done. And this does not deny the fact that we will have spontaneous political meetings. You know, some are not planned. As I indicated, a political leader is leaving to Machakos, but passes by Mlolongo, and there are people running towards the leader. What must we do to ensure that we don't use such meetings to spread COVID unnecessarily? So the issue is that as political actors, the policy is suggesting that we will minimize such meetings so that we tend to lend ourselves only to prior planned meetings as opposed to these spontaneous impromptu sessions that are challenging to such processes. So the second part of that is thinking about the risk, which I've talked about, that there is need for organizers, political parties, organizers and event organizers to undertake comprehensive risk assessment. And once they've done that, they need to be able to develop a risk mitigation plan, and it ought to be implemented. So to be able to deal with that, we've developed some policy statements on what may be needed to help in that planning and mitigating. And those are 10 policy points that appear on the document on page 8. And while I'm not going perhaps to look at each one of them, but the first thing is holding rallies in places large enough to avoid overcrowding and contact between the people is important. In fact, in other jurisdictions, there is already now a requirement that you will not hold a meeting of over 200 people, regardless of how big the venue is. So that is already in some jurisdictions coming up, but I stand guided on what political parties would think would be optimal numbers that they can manage. The second thing is ensuring the safety of the people attending the rallies so that no incidents occur that would jeopardize social distancing measures. We've seen political meetings and rallies where there are stampedes or rival political actors clashing with each other, and therefore the social distancing processes are defeated purely by the issue that two rival political groups want to show who is mighty and who is controlling the space. The third area is disseminating safety information to the people days before the political rallies are held and at no cost. How do we ensure that people have enough information? How do we ensure that where people don't have masks, that we are providing those masks to the people who are attending our meetings? If we don't have the masks, are we liaising with the Ministry of Health so that they can be provided for us? And can we also ensure that such masks and facilities are not provided on a selective basis, depending on political affiliation? Number 5 is the issue of, have you provided hand washing and sanitizing spots around the areas where the rallies would be taking place? This is something that none of the political parties have done where they've held meetings. And it becomes extremely problematic. So yes, we may be providing hand washing and sanitizing spots in our political offices, but let's also think about the external meetings. Do we have mobile water service providers? And are we creating those spots when we want to hold those meetings to ensure that we minimize community transmission? But also there is need for us to ensure that the start of every rally, they take time to sensitize people on COVID-19, the consequences of non-adherence, and encourage them to respect those guidelines to the best of their ability. We now have had even situations where certain political gatherings have ended nearly at the end of the curfew time. So jeopardizing people who attended your meeting to be victims of law enforcement immediately you leave. And that is quite problematic. Number 7 is the need to ensure that we do not play down the severity, which is something I've talked to, severity of the pandemic, or rubbish the importance of science in this time. There are people who are saying that you can manage to mitigate COVID with some of the herbs using traditional ways. That is important, and it may be working, but let's not rubbish science, because the solutions to dealing with this pandemic are going to be informed by rigorous science. So let's try and help ourselves. When we began, we tended to paint that it will be a disease of the old, and the young can roam around. Now we know that it affects all ages. In fact, yesterday, one of those who tested positive was a 4-month-old baby and a 97-year-old man. So the disease is cutting across all ages. I know that we have students who've died. This week alone, we've had a Form 4 girl in a school in Mumias, Lureko Secondary School, dying at age 16. And we've also had a headmistress of a girls' school at age 58 dying. So this disease does not treat anyone well, depending on their age. So we need to be aware and be able to tell everyone that let's not downplay or rubbish science. The next thing is to try and avoid uttering inflammatory statements during rallies, which may lead to clashes likely to expose the attendees to the virus. Sometimes there are those of us who tend to think that the disease is carried by certain ethnic groups or by certain class of people, and therefore we are inciting others against such categories of persons. It is also important what we are pointing out, that in place we must have an emergency response measure in case someone at the rally starts exhibiting signs of coronavirus or is reasonably suspected of having the virus. How do we help them so that they can get the required medical attention without unnecessarily perhaps mobilizing people to beat them up, because they have caused problems to many others. So if we understand that, then what the guides have done, and perhaps Maureen, I stand guided, whether it will be okay for me perhaps to make pauses after every section so that elders like Jacob Haji can come through and tell us what do they make of that section, receive any comments before we go to the next, or do I run through the entire document and then receive comments? Maureen?
Henry, I'll suggest that you pause, we take comments, and then we move on. But at the end of it all, we'll have maybe a Q&A session where anyone who had some suggestions to make but didn't get a time to make will also come in and do that. But in the meantime, you'll just, do the presentation, and then you pause, we have feedback, and then now we move on. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Maureen. So perhaps from there, we've highlighted what this is all about. We've also highlighted what are the core policy positions. So we've dealt with part 1 and part 1, point 2, thinking through the issues from perhaps a conceptual view. What ought to be done externally and what ought to be done internally, and why the policy is important. So happy to take any comments or views from there. I saw people were taking copious notes, so perhaps time to listen to you. Nashon Mwasia?
Okay. Hello.
Hello.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. I think the basic thing, as you have said, we cannot stop everything. Everything, and rather life must continue with or without COVID. And so, as you are talking about public engagements, I believe we can continue engaging virtually, And also at the same time, we must also have to do the physical or other conferences, because we also need to rescue our hospitality industries. Because just as we are talking here, we used to have CMD meetings in hotels, but now imagine for all that time that we have had physical virtual meetings, now those hotels, they have lost whatever they used to gain from CMD. So it's a win-win situation. What I believe it's important, we should try as much as possible to observe the COVID protocols, because these are important, because we have to go on with our daily activities, but regarding the health protocols will help stop the spread of this disease. On political party leaders, I believe they are the ones who should go show guidance. In my interaction with my party leader, we have gone to several meetings, but I believe I can tell you for sure, at any start of the meeting, you tell people try to keep social distance, and you'll never see him addressing a meeting without a mask. Or rather, he would not even allow you to come close to him if you are not wearing a mask yourself. So this is what we need to see, leadership from our leaders, so that they guide the general population. It's worth noting, we have all been here. The deputy president has been holding meetings with no mask, and there are no social distance. You should see handshakes, you would see hugs. And so when we talk about leadership, let's lead by an example. Let's show the people we are leading that this is the way to go. The other thing, I think, what caused the spread of this second wave, it's when the political leaders chose to politicize the pandemic at the expense of the health. That is where a big problem came into. People would say this is a pandemic, this is something for government to make money, or for this faction to make money. And funny enough, the faction that was now dismissing this as a political gimmick, or rather whatever, it has already been hit. Now, currently, we wish them, the leaders who are already affected, quick recovery. But now it is dawning to them that they politicized what should not have been politicized, and they took health at the expense of their political life. So my clarion call, let's leaders engage. Let's all know that if you rather you protect yourself, you're also protecting myself. So it needs a protective approach. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mwasia. Perhaps I just want to point out that we've taken Mwasia as comments well, but I will request that we do not use this discussion to perhaps advance the interest of one political party at the expense of the other, and also to castigate leaders of other parties and praise ours, because then we may just lose the big role we need to play, that we are coming together as brothers and sisters to try and guide the nation. That as our sisters would know, the political parties that we are having are like earrings. They do not change our humanity. So today Mwasia may be in Wiper, tomorrow he will be in another party, and we need to try and find a reason to work together. So I hear you, Mwasia. You've reiterated some of the points that I had raised. The issue of political leaders beginning meetings by passing messages, awareness messages, and helping people to have the requisite social distancing and masks and hand washing spots, even as they get into their political meetings. So thanks so much, Mwasia, for your comments.
Can I give my input?
Yes, Albert, Honorable Albert, karibu sana.
Yes, thank you, colleagues. Yeah, I just want to follow up on what you have presented there, and to state that for real, COVID is real. And one of the areas, one of the sector in our economy that is extremely continuously becoming indisciplined is the political class. And I think as the leadership that we have brought together today, it is paramount of us to ensure that every meeting that takes place must have the following. One is we should ensure that if you are booking a political meeting in a room, it should just be known that you'll be able to do the what you call the pre-registration, so that you can be able to know the measure the size of the room as per the number of people they're expecting. Secondly, is to ensure that, because one of the challenges that I found out is the use of the microphone, and it is one of the very dangerous aspects that can be able to spread this COVID. I normally see people, trying to see that they are, sanitizing the microphone, but in essence, if you look at even the content of the sanitizer, it's not one that can be able to be used to say that it can be able to save the use of the machine. So I think where possible, let us not use microphones. Where possible, let us not use microphones. The third, and I think you need to kind of, because I saw what is going on in Sambweni. The president said that there are not going to be any political gathering. What I do not know is whether sitting under the tree is considering to be a town hall meeting. Because I have seen a clip, one or two clips, where you see the people, about 100, 200 people seated under the tree. There is no social distance, and even if there is some level of social distance, the manner at which our people are wearing that mask is again is posing again a great risk to the people. So I think it is very important from the political leadership we just become disciplined. Guys, this thing is a killer disease. We can continue saying that we want to do political meeting, but we lose everybody. So I think it is very important we just set the agenda very clear. If you are coming for a meeting, you must have a sanitizer, you must sanitize, you must have a mask. And again, we have to determine the number of people should. I think the key word that I'm saying, let us determine the number of people who are going to attend this meeting. Reason being, because you see, Kenyans, we seem to be forgetting again the aspect of contact tracing. If at all there is going to be one or two positive cases, who has attended their meeting? If you do not keep record of the people attended, then even in terms of contact tracing, it's going to be very very difficult for the Ministry of Health and so forth. So I think those are the things that we can be able to do. For the big rallies, big meetings, please, let's shelve it. The time for that will come. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kochai, for those remarks. I don't know if Henry is still around. Kindly mute your mic, please. I can see Dr. Jacob Haji trying to raise up his hand. So as we get Henry back, maybe we can have the feedback back from Dr. Haji. Dr. Haji, kindly unmute your mic. Not yet. Your mic is still muted.
I'm here, Maureen.
Thank you, Henry. We can have now Dr. Haji give his contribution, and then now you can just come back and.
Maureen, can you?
Yes,
Hello?
we can hear you now. We can hear you now, Dr. Haji.
Okay, thank you for that. It is really this disease is here with us, and let us not ignore that there is no disease, so that you can do whatever you want to do. I want to appeal to political leaders that I really want to say hi to my previous speaker. What he has said, I want to agree with that. But you remember there is something now people want to do, something called referendum, which some of us will not agree at all. Political parties, you must come up very strong, so that you can stop this something called referendum. This is another disease will come. I wonder, these people want to have a referendum. If Kenyans, everybody dies, whom are they going to rule? So these people, they are not their intention, they want to do something that wave of this corona. So please, I appeal to you, don't allow these things take place. Let us wait until this disease we control. You remember last time we have controlled these things up to come certain level. But now it is shoot because of that rallies, these rallies you have seen some 2 weeks or 2 weeks ago. So I want to appeal to the leaders of political parties. Let us not allow this disease to continue. And also, we've been allowed to meet in the hotels, provided not exceeding that people. That can be allowed, and we can meet and discuss. CMD, Maureen, you can organize meeting of face-to-face of that people, not more than that people. You can do this one now. Today you have almost, when you are introducing yourself, you say we're expecting 40 people. Instead of 40 people, you can have that 40 people in the hotel with the distance, sitting distance, and then people discuss exactly what is going on in this country. The country has gone out of hands. Let us not allow, as leaders, something like this to happen. Please. That is my comments to these ones. Thank you. I hope
Thank you, Dr. Haji, for your comments. Yes, I think Franklin began by pointing out that the discussions around governance reforms is here, and the big political players are the ones that pushed us. Hello? That
Maureen,
pushed us.
Hello?
Anyone
Albert,
else?
Mr. Albert, please.
I wanted to, comment on what Dr. Aja just said. My understanding is that this forum, we are not going to discuss about whether referendum should continue or not, because there are parties like my party, which we have a very strong, we are strong proponent for the BBI, not even for referendum, for BBI, because BBI is not about referendum alone. But I thought we should be discussing about, if at all we are going to take that direction, then we should be talking about modalities. And I thought the president had said that if there is going to be any meeting, we should just restrict ourselves to the town hall meetings, which we can restrict the numbers. I stand guided.
Thank you. Let me intervene briefly so that you can put this into context. And I really have a lot of respect for the views expressed by Moasia, my elder Haji, and the others. However, I took time to contextualize this conversation and said, more important is that political parties are public institutions. They need to comply with the law. This compliance will require that political parties organize, mobilize, and meet at local and national level so that they can be able to comply. That is key. On the referendum, I said whether you agree with the president and Honorable Raila Odinga that we have a constitutional moment, or whether you agree with a section of civil society that says tekeleza katiba, or you are part of that political grouping that wants to be persuaded, you still need to organize, you still need to mobilize, you still need to meet at the local and national level. Now, the question that we're grappling with is that we are confronted by the reality of the COVID-19 pandemic, which is a threat to public health. Do we postpone these political activities that are at the core of our democracy, or do we use the COVID-19 pandemic and apply the law selectively, disenfranchise people unnecessarily, and breed more trouble for the country? Or do we practically, as leaders, look at each other in the eye and say, like churches, we can be able to agree on how to go about our business? And this is what CMD is trying to do with your partnership and the office of the registrar of political parties that that regulates the political sector. And so I would beseech us to approach this with an open mind. We're not as CMD interested in, and like all of you are members of CMD. There are those ones that want to be persuaded. There are those ones that are tekeleza katiba. There are those ones that feel there is a constitutional moment. But the most important thing is, how do we deliberate on this? So let us divorce that and not relate the two, and just see how do we protect public health and safeguard the democratic and civic space that will help all of us discuss these things as Kenyans and move forward. I hope with that context, elders, brothers and sisters, we are in good shape to be able to converse these things without biases. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. I can contribute.
Thanks, Franklin. Tony Muturi, you can proceed. Make your comments, please.
Yeah, and I'm not going to belabor on what the various speakers have spoken about, the issue of the referendum and the need for us to continue to balance between the need to keep on our governance structures running, as also as we try to maintain or observe these protocols. Mine will be in regard to how then are we as political parties prepared to confront this particular problem. Going through these protocols, and more or less the ones which have been developed by the Ministry of Health, is that there is a burden that will come with observance of these protocols, meaning that we need to have another cost implication in terms of us trying to implement the same. For instance, when you talk about we need to have more or less like town hall meetings, and where you need to have less people attend, then again, it requires that political parties need to dig deep into their pockets and fund this kind of smaller meetings, buy the thermogans, buy the sanitizers, and other necessities like the masks. And I know the Ministry of Health or the government is rolling out programs, sensitization programs, through various channels, either using government agencies, using CSOs. And as we rightly stated in these protocols, politicians have a greater influence, the larger sector of the public. Then at what point do we interface with the government that we can co-partner in terms of running these particular activities? They have funds, and I understand most of our political parties, except ODM and Jubilee, who get the political party funding, majority of our parties don't have that luxury. Then is there a way as political parties, through the PPLC, and it's good again, I've had the Registrar of Political Parties office is involved in this, is there a way we can, even CMD, we can get a partnership with government and see how best then political parties can be facilitated to a certain extent, not only in terms of carrying out their activities, but to also offer support in terms of civic awareness in this particular post. That will be my contribution.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Muturi.
Yeah, because they are talking something totally different.
Jacob, kindly mute your mic, please. Jacob, if you can hear me. Thank you. Henry, you can go on. But I think Ruth Bolo was speaking, if I'm not wrong.
There's also Abdurrahman that has his hand up.
I wasn't speaking, Tony was speaking, but I would like to go next. If permitted, I just wanted to put my voice into the conversation going on. No, I don't think we should push the political meetings. One, because of the question, what if COVID is here to stay? Are we going to hold the meetings till, are we going to stop political meetings because we do not know how to handle this? My advice would be we need to come up with a proper regulated formula of how we can carry out this meeting. I mean, look at countries like Ghana, they're having their elections. How are they doing their campaigns? What if Kenya was having their elections in 3 months' time? Would we say we are halting the political meetings because we do not know how to deal with it? Why can't we come up with a formula and see how to carry out, even if it is the issue of the BBI conversation? Let them start with internal party meetings and then let it cascade down to the grassroots level. But let us have regulated formula, but not cancelling or postponing because we do not know how long COVID will be there. And someone spoke about Msambweni, and in a general campaign setup, in an open air market rally or conversation or meeting, it is very difficult to regulate who is coming in, how many people will come in, and at what point. And someone has asked in this chat session, so how do you know how many wash stations you need to have? My thinking, and again I stand guided, would be why can't we have as many wash stations as possible in every rally? Why can't we have sanitization booths present there? We are not saying it's going to be easy to rather ensure that everyone who gets in doesn't have COVID, but we can do the much that we can to ensure that we minimize the spread. There was also the conversation about politicians being the ones to make people think that there's no COVID, so they can go ahead and disregard the directives that have been given by Ministry of Health. Again, my perspective on the same is different, and this is why. Number one, the minute there was a documentary in the media about COVID millionaires and all these commentaries that were sort of showcasing that the government only wanted money out of this. At that particular point, all citizens, or most citizens, sorry, became relaxed. If you look at funerals of politicians back even in Mashinani, you will realize that the more the function is going on, the closer people get, the more crowded people, become. So it is not just political rallies, it is funerals, it is weddings, it is all these things. So what we need to find out is how can we regulate? How can we minimize the spread even in this particular setup? Because majority of the responsibility lies with the citizens. So long as the citizens have stood their ground, the politicians will definitely bend to the will of the citizens. And we have seen it in so many other examples. I think that is all I had wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdurrahman.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
I'm from the Register of Political Parties. We are the primary body concerned with the registration and regulation of political parties in Kenya. Even before the pandemic, we had a compliance problem in ensuring political parties stick with the requirements of conducting business in Kenya. And with the arrival of COVID, this has complicated matters in Kenya because, as you know, as an office, we normally administer the political parties fund, which basically like 2 to 3 years up to today, only 2 political parties have been able to access the funds in Kenya. And currently we have like 71 registered political parties. And so the issue of compliance with the COVID-19 guidelines and protocols might prove to be a tall order to political parties. But because the pandemic is here with us, we can't be able to predict how long it will be here. So as political parties, they have no option but to comply with the health guidelines and protocols that have been set aside and have been legitimized by the passage of the the relevant laws. But as we have witnessed in Kenya, the recent political party, the recent political gatherings have been super spreaders in Kenya, where the participants have shown little regard to social distancing, wearing of masks, even in terms of hygiene and everything. So the question is, can the political parties be able to comply with the guidelines and protocols that have been suggested in the guidelines that we have received from CMD? That's the question. And even bearing in mind the recent election in the United States, you can see where the Republicans, led by Donald Trump, were not able to comply. In fact, they had little disregard for the COVID. If you looked at the other side, Joe Biden, they had to be creative and innovative. For example, they used to conduct town hall meetings. And in fact, one of the rallies, the attendants used to come with their own vehicles to participate in the rallies. So as for Kenya, we have to come up with creative ways on how we can proceed the political activities, because there's a likelihood of referendum in Kenya. We are less than 2 years to the general elections, and of course there will be primaries before the general elections. So we have to come up with, the political parties have to have no choice but to stick with the guidelines that have been provided by the health ministry. Okay, that's my submission.
Thank you, Abdurrahman. I think I get two sides. At one point, you are saying it will be too hard for them to comply. At another side, you are telling us, let's try and see if they can comply. But your point is made. So we would see how best to average both sides of the sentiments you're making. Any other input? Any other input? Is there anybody else carrying up their hand and I might not be seeing? If not, then what
yes,
in the
my hand is up.
Your hand is up. Please make your point.
Thank you so much. My name is Maurice Ndwiga, Waipaya. And I think this document by CMD could actually offer some good guidelines, but you can see, as we can all see, that COVID-19 guidelines, how to mitigate and how to deal with this virus, all the guidelines have really been impossible to effect. We cannot control crowds, and you know, Kenyan politics is full of crowds. It will be impossible for us to control such kind of crowds unless we completely try to advocate for town hall meetings. But you know, in our local politics is that town hall meetings, some people will feel left out. And sometimes politicians really want to see the huge crowds. It also, we all know as a politician. So with that in mind, and knowing that controlling crowds will be truly difficult, it will actually be a challenge to control crowds. And I think we have seen that from the recent rallies that we have actually witnessed from different political leaders, including our own churches where we go to. You realize that sometimes it's a bit difficult to control. So for the contents in the document, in as much as the contents in the document could really be some good guidance on how to control this kind of stuff. And like you mentioned in page number 8, if I may just refer to it, page number 8, point number 5, where you have to ensure that everybody washes their hands and they sanitize. It is very difficult when people are coming to the stadia or to the fields or to the open grounds. It is very difficult really to ensure that they all wash their hands, that we start our rallies on time, and you know, there are these kind of timings. So there are two things here that are involved. Number one, it's either we save the public or we just decide to go the Tanzania way. We just say to go the Tanzania way, or we decide to save the public, that we halt any public meetings, we halt any public rallies, any political gatherings. They either halted, or we just decide it's everybody for themselves, which is again not good when it comes to protecting the people, which is the responsibility of the government. Of course, we said that there's the right to freedom of association, freedom of movement, and all that kind of stuff. But like we all know, some of these rights may not actually be absolute, because it is dependent on the situation in the country, the timings, and all that. That's why nobody today can sue the government for forcing them to be in the houses, either by 7 or by 9. So these rights, again, they have to be regulated. Otherwise, we lose everybody. And like some of the previous speakers have said, that people will die. My friend Jacob Haji of DP, he said, if all these people die, then who will actually these politicians lead? So I think with that in mind, we may have to make critical and very difficult decision whether to continue with public political rallies. We just hurt them all together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Muriuki, for your comments. I noticed that you're also speaking in what I call double speak. Where do we go?
Yes.
The truth is that we are not able to totally hold the activities. And the reason as to why the guidelines are coming up is to ensure that we don't have one side of the political players, the activities totally halted, and then the activities of another side being permitted, but the spread going on. So I doubt we are able to go the Tanzanian way. We are perhaps a more sophisticated country, and it's possible if us as political leaders make that wish. I've seen, previous years they used to say it would be impossible to have a soccer match without spectators. And I'm a serious football supporter. And at one point, I paid my money to go to Emirates and noticed that because I was among very few people allowed in, the stadium had less than 1,000 people in the entire Emirates that sometimes has 70, 80,000 people in. But if you go into that stadium today, before you get in, you must wash your hands. It's not either or. You have no option. If you don't wash your hand, you don't get into the turnstile that will allow you to get in. So if you are using any other way, you're not going to get in. And it's possible. I've seen churches have changed their masses. Churches have different masses for different ages and different people. Some used to have one mass or two. They now have 4 because they need to reach more people. So the political class must come to terms with this reality that COVID is here. And once we have come to that reality, we have then a duty to try and advise our people. And there are some things we may be able to do well. There are others we may not be able to do well. So how do we grow into those things properly? So I hear you, and I hear the difficulties, but the protocols are supposed to help us so that there isn't a discriminatory implementation of those protocols, that everybody is allowed, and where possible, we can be able to resort to town halls. It's not impossible. Most people who campaign in Nairobi don't hold political rallies for the smaller seats. It's the presidential candidates that turn into political rallies. But if you go into Eastlands in Makadara, you will notice that the leaders in Embakasi East, Embakasi West, tend to go to churches, they tend to go to houses for their campaigns. But when the presidential candidate is in their region, they do public rallies. So we just have an opportunity to reorient ourselves. Otherwise, given that our hospitals are already overwhelmed, our homes don't have the basics, then we are going to have a big problem. I know of a number of political party secretariats that have been closed now because they didn't take care of even their staff. So it's not just about the rallies. It's also about internalizing the need to have clear public health practices around us. And if it means that we need to talk to governors so that certain public places have these hand washing spots, then that is a good investment in advance before you do your rally. Can we speak to, say, Mutua, so that there are enough hand washing spots in Mlolongo? Can we speak to Oparanya so that there are enough hand washing places in Sabatia, in Butere? Can we speak to enough governor's son so that in Kapsabet town, before that meeting happens, there are enough hand washing systems? Or in Huruma in Eldoret, before we go to Bari, that MCA who has died of COVID related, that there are enough hand washing spots in Huruma. Because if we don't, yesterday I saw a number of politicians in Matungu, and they made stops in the market centers at Shibale and others. And those areas don't have hand washing spots. So increasingly, we are aware of what we are doing, but on one hand, we hear politicians are saying they want to be evacuated by planes. What of the masses that you would leave behind? So for me, that's the big question, that people still want to be guided by you. People still want to meet you so that you give them direction, but please don't destroy the entire country. And that's why we are coming up with this. So I've had those comments, and perhaps what we can try and think through, because the subsequent parts talk about the health hygiene practices, and we just need to know that there isn't anything new that we have suggested, but we've just tried to reiterate some of those things. We've talked about the issues of cleaning and disinfection of rally venues. So supposing there was a big rally in Matungu, how do we have the areas fumigated? How do we have the areas cleaned so that we are not predisposing the bigger community to such processes? And I like the issue that colleagues have spoken to about public address systems and mics. How do we ensure that they are not the next tools that are spreading the disease? So if it's not working very well, one of the areas that I am pointing at is the need for registration for contact tracing. I think this is the biggest challenge for political gatherings, that contact tracing is falling hollow because we do not know who was in the meeting at all. And that is becoming problematic. So happy to hear you on issues of registration. I know that Muriuki is saying it might be very hard to control crowds, but are we able to say who our mobilizers are and who they have mobilized to come to the meeting? Because we use our mobilizers. Are we able to know who our influencers are and say, yes, I had a meeting of 1,000 people, but I used 200 mobilizers for each of them bringing 100 people, so that for purposes of contact tracing, we are able to meet each other. There is a big question about testing, which perhaps had gone low. We may want, I saw the other day when Harambee Stars players were in Comoros and there were tests done and results given to them in less than 5 hours. Other people are now having tests done and results come out in less than 15 minutes. This is a discussion that political parties can get into. So if we all have tests, then there is a possibility that those of us who either have the challenge or our temperatures are showing that we could be predisposed are isolated. They are not allowed to be in the meeting, and therefore the spread is in a way mitigated. If we don't do that, then it's very hard. And the truth is that freedom of assembly is not an absolute right. In cases of pandemics, in cases of emergencies, it can be restricted. What we don't want is that the restriction is happening whimsically. The restriction is not following clearly laid down and agreed upon standards in that process. So this document, I think Maureen will guide us, but has been shared with all your political parties. And we are happy to get your comments on the specifics. How best do we deal with this? Do we have emergency response systems? Tracy, for the meetings that your team has organized, do you have emergency response processes? Amy Chepkemoi, do you have those emergency response processes? And if not, are we asking our leaders to prepare for those emergencies? Or do we allow them to be flown off by their choppers immediately they are done with the meeting and leave the local hospitals inundated by numerous cases of COVID? Yet now they are gone and they are saying we cannot control the crowd. So happy to hear any of you, even as I get to the last parts where I will perhaps need to reiterate more points on utterances made during the political rallies, where we are making some clear recommendations.
Henry, I don't know if I'll be jumping the gun, but on the same, still on page 8, yes. I was just looking at and listening to what you were saying about the registration and rather, contact tracing. And I think it is something very, very possible. The only thing I know with political parties is that there is the issue of poaching of members and all these things. And considering that there are a few loopholes at the registrar, a number of political parties might not necessarily be very willing to provide that information. However, I wanted to also pen down if we can include in this same proposals on page 8, whenever you're going to do a rally, say you've gone to Kakamega, for example, how about liaising with a nearby hospital so that they are able to receive any cases that they have after that, or any emergency cases that shall be there. During the sensitization of the rally, you let them know that, so we have Kakamega Hospital that is ready to receive anyone who has the following symptoms, and also letting people know, even prior, as you have mentioned, through TOTs, that there are going to be certain procedures that will be taken out. We shall be having free mass testing, provided, of course, by if it is a government or if it is the party or whatever, just so that to ensure that you take an extra step to really, really try and prevent the spread of this virus. While it might not exactly be substantial or realistic to say that, as in number 4, that by not allowing anyone who does not have a mask on, they will have their mask throughout the rally. Once they get in, 2 steps after that gate, they're going to remove that mask. Most of them will not even know where they have kept that mask. So if we can have things like, the mass testing, ensure that they have been trained before the politicians talk, during breaks of the various politicians' speeches, ensuring there is a hospital nearby that is ready, I think, and having a quarantine or isolation center within the area where the rally is being carried out. That way we can also be able to test out of this rally how many people have had symptoms. Then we are able to know that certain rallies have got people who are reporting to have higher symptoms or higher cases of COVID because of A, B, C, and D. That way we can now come up with a formula for rallies, political rallies, that will take place in future. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Let's perhaps have another comment. I hear what Ruth has pointed out, the issue of liaising with local hospitals. But my point on number 4, that our marshals must keep vigil. We must be known to be the party that would enforce the processes. It doesn't pay to say our leader observes this, and the masses in the meeting have removed their masks. So we need to be able to say we will take more cognizance of that, and we will keep reminding each other that by putting on the mask, you protect yourself and you also protect those that are around you if you care about them. When you remove the mask, you don't care about yourself and you don't care about those who are around you. That should be a good rallying call to help us ensure that we don't play this cat and mouse thing. When I see all of us have masks, but they have turned to be necklaces, even for men who say, I'm not like the other man who puts on necklaces. All our masks are hanging in our necks as the new type of necklaces. So we need to be aware and remind each other that if you care about yourself and you care for people around you, you need to have your mask on and properly worn. Any other concern? Albert, Honorable Albert, you had a concern again?
Yeah. I have two things to one is to ask CMD.
Yes.
Because right now we know we are somehow within, we are almost getting into another political season. If you remove the BBI, the 2022, and with 2022 coming, there is a need, of course, for political parties, all these aspect of membership recruitment. And I want to believe with CMD, if they can be able to, in light of the COVID, if they can be able to organize probably, a training or a talk with all the political parties single-handedly to handle the whole aspect of voter membership registration. Reason being, so that then we can be able to avoid, if we can be able to have a model or a system that can be able to ensure that we minimize at all level human contact. The other one is it's unfortunate that we've lost several politicians, and that means there is likely to be a by-election. It's already a by-election that is good. There's a campaign that is going on in the midst of COVID. And, Nakuru, definitely we are going to have a by-election. At least there's lost 2 MCAs. There is Mombasa, they lost an MCA. There is Matungu, they lost, and God forbid, we do not know how many politicians we are going to lose. And that continuously is going to pose a great threat to the human life in terms of campaign. And I think my view is now that the president has already said that there is not going to be any public gathering until January to be reviewed. Is it possible for CMD and probably through we can harmonize agreement that for any political activity to take place, including Uruma, where I am now, where there is a lot of political heat because of the upcoming by-election, that we begin now forcing, and allow me to begin, forcing people to use social media, forcing people to begin using radio programs, using television to market the ideology. And so that by the time we are getting to 2022, we have already, done a norm. There is going to be a norm. It looks like therefore going forward, we are likely not to be having all these public rallies. And I think if we have the goodwill even from the top leadership, it is possible for meetings not to be done in a public rally. It's possible for, we now just adopt a different technology. And one of the technology is social media, because social media now is driving everything. And it is possible for anybody's agenda to be done. So that we will say like any public rally, any public meeting, it can only be a town hall. If there is no town hall, forget about it. And enforcement should be able to take over from them. Thank you.
Thanks. I like that clarity of thought from Albert. Very soon we will propose that you also become an enforcement officer for political parties, and perhaps we will have a change. But the points are well made. I think Franklin and Maureen will come back to the requests that have been made. They might not make a response now, but it's something for them to think about. How may we help political parties to do their membership recruitment and compliance issues Are there any softwares that could be developed so that they can learn from them? The softwares should have perhaps the data protection by design, so that the big fear that when they share certain details, they are leaked out and members are lost to rival parties. How do we develop a process that may be helpful? And I think there lies many solutions in IT. It's just yesterday that we were told that Kenya has the highest repository of application developers in the world outside the US. So that is already telling us that we have the capacity, that Brazil, Japan may be doing well, but they don't have the numbers that we have. We have many, but we just don't refine them into market or market products. So we need to ask ourselves, how may we do that? The issue of how do we manage the by-elections perhaps is a bigger discussion that political parties are going to have. I think there's been a discussion on whether the declaration of those vacancies are going to be, in a way, pushed back a bit so that we don't have as much problem. But of course, there are populations that would suffer because their representatives have died. So there are more discussions beyond the COVID guidelines, but I hear you in what you are saying. It's possible for us to begin mitigating. And one thing I've liked about Honorable Albert's position is that we can still have meetings. They ought not be physical. We can still do virtual meetings. We can use social media and other mainstream media to reach our people without necessarily endangering each other's health. So that's a new, perhaps, rallying call we need to look at and see how best to move the process. So if we are in agreement, I think the social distancing thing is the biggest challenge in town. And I would request that we all look at the provisions on social distancing. So yes, we want to have few physical meetings, but when we must, how best do we keep social distancing? How do we ensure that the venues we pick are venues we can be able to control who comes in and who goes out, and the space between different people, so that do not pick a market as the place you want to do your public rally. Perhaps pick a stadium, pick a school where your security processes can be able to manage who gets into the school field, as opposed to when you pick the market and then you say it's impossible to control the crowds. We want to bring responsibility back to you by saying, did you think through the choice of the venue? Did you have a risk assessment? Do you have a risk mitigation plan? And therefore your choice of the place is helpful to others. The issue of masks, I think politicians must be able to bring back that reality that we need masks. And when worn properly, they help save the individual who's wearing them, and they also help save the others. But if we don't, then there is a challenge that sometimes we have the masks, but we are just spreading the disease to other people. The third point is about that disinfection and cleaning of places where we are in. And I had, I think, Ruth pointed out the issue that funerals, weddings are ongoing. I've been to a wedding or two since March, and I remember a wedding in Bungoma in the church lasted 30 minutes to be precise. And I liked that because there was no politician involved. In the subsequent one, where the politician, because it was a son to a politician, they were there for 4 hours. That means that politicians can make a change if they so choose. It's possible to clean up spaces, to help turn these things around. But it could also be a different discussion at a policy level. why are thermometer, the handguns, still being taxed as luxuries if we need them in our meetings? These are quick discussions that could be there. Can we have them imported, perhaps a tax-free, so that we have many of them around, and in our meetings, however small, we are able to check each other's temperature, and where people may need to be isolated, then we will be able to make those recommendations. The last part, which is perhaps most problematic, is about the utterances that most of us make, sometimes knowingly or for purposes of scoring political bonga points, because this is the political moment. So most of us sometimes are making statements that could be problematic. They are making statements that are saying we don't have that money or money has been squandered. So we need to be able to see, yes, it is important that as politicians, we hold those in the executive accountable. We are able to pursue where there've been misappropriation of resources, but we also need to be aware that we could push the country onto the wrong side by downplaying the severity of the virus. And when that happens, none of us is going to be safe, because this thing is here and it's likely to wipe out all of us. So I take that perhaps each of the political parties would still want to look at the draft as shared. And if there is an opportunity to hand in written comments, we will welcome them. If not, I take the comments that have been shared, and I'll be trying to review the document, and then Franklin and his team would see how best to process it moving forward. So I want to end there and perhaps allow Maureen and Franklin to give guidance on how best to move the process. But there are those of us who didn't say anything. If you still have some comments to make, kindly please make them, because this is a liberty discussion. We don't need one party or one colleague left behind that they didn't give me a chance.
Hello?
Jonah Moite.
Yes, Imoite.
Imoite.
Yes, asante Bwana Henry for a good presentation and moderation thereof. It's just a couple of things. I don't know whether you can hear me well.
I can, sir. Sorry that
excellent.
I have a cousin called Amoit, so that's how I'm struggling to run away to Imoite.
Very well, Bwana Henry. Just a couple of things. One, for me, as a country, we seem to be looking at COVID as a Kenyan COVID, that there would be an American COVID or some such other COVID for another country or something like that. Like the representative from the political parties registrar's office said, you look at case situations out there. The American one is present in our minds because of what is going on there now. You know, two sides. The Republican side, led by Donald Trump, basically said, ignore this thing. Then the Joe Biden side said, let's respect protocols as brought out in what and so forth. And we can see the results that have played out there. Americans are paying the price of not going by some of these protocols as advised with their own lives. Now, you look at other countries like South Korea and some notable ones in Europe. They came up with very good protocols, which they followed, and what and so forth. And the results are there to be seen by everyone. Now, when you come to our own situation here, I think our biggest problem, and I think this was mentioned a little earlier by one of the participants, our biggest problem was the mixed messaging that came from the government. Because we have a credibility issue, when a senior government officer is speaking, there's this dismissive sort of thing that you get from the populace, such that if we are talking about going out there as political parties, as political leaders, to do meetings and with compliance to some of these protocols, which we should, there is a problem. You tell our people to come to rallies wearing masks, like you have said there, Bwana Henry, they come wearing them as necklaces. Why? Because they have this feeling in their minds, you see, this thing is, either a scheme by this group or that other one to do this and that. And yet we know that COVID is ravaging societies across the world. So for me, I think the starting point, yes, as political parties, there's a bit we would do, there's a part we would do, and indeed we can. But the government needs to do something about its communication about some of these things. Because even when we say, like the president said the other day, no rallies, no political meetings, no this, no that. And I hasten to add, you see, we say these things, but then the following day, a week later, same senior officers, government functionaries are coming out to disobey the same. So we are speaking from both sides of our mouths. One part we are saying, let's not do this. Another, we are doing it ourselves. We are confusing the public. So yes, as political parties, we have a role to play. We have a part to play in this, but our part is weakened. Even if we're going to go out there to say that as this party or that other party, we're going to do this, our part is weakened because the people we're engaging with have different messages they get from senior government officers. Maybe to point out, the other day, because I think vaccines are coming out, Pfizer is coming out, another organization to come out with a vaccine. Our own cabinet secretary was quoted somewhere dismissing that and saying, no, it's not going to come here. And we get information from different sources. And when we have reason to believe that an institution such as Pfizer, highly respected across the world, they're coming up to say that this thing is coming up here. I am here as a Kenyan. My CS, whom I'm depending on to do some things, to say some things that would benefit me and other people, is dismissing this. I get confused. So for me, yes, we have our part, but the government has a huge part because enforcement of these things and coming up with the protocols themselves and what and so forth lies in their hands. That would be my bit. Thank you.
I think clarity of the message that the state and the government wants to put forth would be helpful. I thought that the CS misspoke because he was given an opportunity, I think, on JK Live, and he said he may have misspoke. So that perhaps is also just the challenge we have as a country, that sometimes when you are a leader, when is you as an individual message and when is yours the formal message. And the CS Kagwe may have missed that there is no distinction when you speak. The government is speaking, especially on this thorny issue. So I hear you, clarity of thought, and appreciate those comments, Imoite.
Thank you.
Any other comment, Tracy? You seem to be consulting more, so I hope that something has come through.
Yeah, we're doing a bit of consultation on this end, but Maureen will speak on behalf of the rest of us. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comment? So I hope that each one of us have received the draft and are happy to make their comments. I can see Lillian Anyango. Do you want to say something, Lillian? If not, Maureen, am I perhaps not seeing anybody who wants to make a comment?
Henry, I think
my hand is up. I don't know. It's been up for a while.
Then proceed, Susan. I didn't see you. My
Thank
apologies.
Thank you. Thank you, the conveners, for this very enlightening meeting. And I would like to point out an issue that I don't think I've had it being discussed or being mentioned, the issue of disposal of the masks that we are using. I think it is going to be the next big thing in terms of transmission if we do not educate the public in regard to disposal of the masks that we are using. And they are going to be the next big transmitter of this coronavirus. And as many colleagues who've spoken to before have pointed out, that in public gatherings, you find people wearing it, but not wearing it correctly. And the next thing that you'll see in that field when they have left is a litter of blue color in terms of the masks that they had been using. So you can imagine whoever will come back to clean the area, and not just clean, you could even have children playing in the same field and therefore using the masks that have been left behind. So as we look at the protocols, we really need to look at disposal of masks that have been used. My second point would be to emphasize and maybe add a little bit to a speaker who spoke earlier in terms of equipping the nearest facility. And if we are developing protocols, then my suggestion would be that before a public rally or a public event is carried out, the first thing that should be done is to ensure that the nearest health facility is not just informed, but equipped to be ready to take care of any emergencies that may arise. And not just take care of the emergencies during the meeting, but this will be a way of ensuring that facilities across are being equipped to take care of this and any other the situations that may arise within the villages or wherever meetings are taking places. Because you may inform them that yes, you need to handle, but you have not equipped them accordingly. And I think this is an opportunity that then political parties and through, of course, our convener, in terms of protocol, that we ensure that anytime a public event is going to take place, the nearest facility is equipped to be able to take care of that. Then they can be left even to take care of the people around there once the meeting is over. My third comment would be on the issue of digitization. I think we cannot cheat ourselves. We are now in the era of digitization. There are many organizations who I know, including where I work, that we haven't been in the office since March. And the work has not stopped. Work has been going on. So it's a high time that CMD, our partner, and the other partners come in terms of building capacity of political parties to be able to move from the manual way of doing stuff to now getting digitization, that registration is digitized, records in public, in political parties are digitized, so that then we are moving forward in terms of where the world is moving. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Susan. Points well made, and I think the additions would, in a way, be telling us before we rush to have the public meetings, have we equipped the centers so that we are just not informing those who are not able to take care of those situations, but also your big addition on the issue of disposal. It's one of the things I've been struggling with, and in fact, somewhere else I've written a paper on what could be the challenge with the disposal of the masks and other COVID-related used equipment in a country like Kenya, where we tend to have people pick the garbage and drop them in the fields at night. So I've had you, and that would be included. Monsieur Stephen, you want to say something? Stephen Namsule.
Can I say something? This is Lillian.
Yes, Lillian, please proceed. Lillian, please proceed.
Hello, Henry. Can I say something?
Yes, yes, please, Lillian, proceed. Stephen, mute, and then we'll come to you after Lillian.
Thank you so much for the chance. Asante sana for the chance. Now, I'm just saying there is something positive that we need to pick from this COVID-19 pandemic, because if we, I'm just doing a summary of the recommendations that we have, especially for political parties. Just 5 of them. There should be no food or refreshment. There should be no dancing on the rallies. There should be no inflammatory remarks that would spark violence. There should be no meet and greet, and there should be fumigation before and after that. I picked 2 things. Number 1, if all these issues were implemented, then we will have sanitized the political process in Kenya. Because, you know, inflammatory remarks, all those things that would make it even hard, even for women to vibe, because those are the things that are actually impediments. So for me, it is a very good platform, not just for COVID situation, but for the future going ahead. Yes, thank you.
Those guidelines have a bigger effect. They help us mitigate COVID, but they also ensure that we make the field level for all other players. So I hear you. Thank you, Lillian. Stephen, did you want to say something? If not, then Maureen, please take over the meeting and guide us on how we finalize.
Thank you so much, Henry, for that good presentation and also moderation of the same. And thank you to everyone else who is represented here from the various political parties. Thank you so much for the feedback that you've given to us towards these protocols, and we will ensure that we input them so that as we even move forward, as Frank has said, that we'll be having follow-up meetings of the same until we get these protocols approved. We are going to keep inputting this the suggestions that you've made, and we also encourage you that, you know, as you continue to, you know, get to read the document further, we also welcome more feedback from you that will help us to better this document. As for now, we've had input being given into, you know, defining on what constitutes a political meeting. Is it open? Is it an enclosed meeting? About the funds, like not all political parties have the capacity to, you know, put in place these protocols, buy masks and everything for the crowds that they are going to attract. We also have issues of, you know, coming up with a formula on how to conduct these activities, enforcement of the protocols, is it ORPP who is going to enforce that? And then we also have, you know, equipping the nearest hospitals to be able to you know, handle the cases that may arise, and also coming up with ways on how to dispose the masks that will be left behind by the, you know, the participants who will be attending these political rallies. We also have a suggestion that on CMD-Kenya to just sensitize political parties and teach them how to, you know, go digital and conduct the activities. Also to register their members. I know one political party has, I think, moved forward and has already digitized their program. That is Kano, if I'm not wrong. A while ago, they launched theirs. Maybe we will interact more on that and then know how, you know, the other parties can also learn from them, and how we can ensure that the ORPP implements the same in registering, and also political parties, how they can register their members virtually without, you know, getting one-on-one physical contact. So for those remarks and the feedback that we got from every member, we promise that we're going to, you know, input into this document that we have, and then we will again have another meeting, maybe with the political parties again, and then with the ORPP and other governmental institutions, so that we can ensure that we have one document that is going to guide the overall conduct of political parties' activities, because we know it is inevitable. We can't stop them completely. Either way, we will have one going on here, another one going on the other way around. So we will have to actually come up with a way of saying that, yes, we're going to move on with conducting activities, but in a regulated manner, in a good format that will, cap the spread of the virus. So those are my remarks. Now let me welcome on board our Executive Director, Mr. Franklin Mukwanja, to give his feedback and also to make the closing remarks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maureen, and thank you, Henry, for both moderating and facilitating the conversation in a very good way. And also thank you for political party members and officials for the real candid contributions to this conversation. As I already mentioned, this is an ongoing process and we will not stop at it. The start is already good. We have a draft, we have the registrar on board. We want to move this process, as I said, to the level that your individual political parties would be comfortable with these protocols, endorse them, move to the ministries that are relevant, the Ministry of Health and Interior, to be able to, put them in place so that you can be able to organize. Before I go straight to the issue of party membership and respond to that more specifically, allow me to say several things that I've noted. I think it's quite interesting for the insights that you have come up with, that it's actually an opportunity not just to control COVID, but also sanitize the political party environment, which I think it's really good that some of those recommendations go a long way to sanitizing the political environment. And that is really a good observation. And I think where I sit beyond COVID, this country, these challenges are twofold, that we suffer from a moral and leadership crisis, particularly the political leadership crisis that we have in this country. It is important that you as political leaders then have a very serious conversation about what is your contribution to getting this country to at least be fashionable, not to be fashionable to follow the rule of law. And if you look at the challenges that we are going through, we have to spend a lot of money on GSU and the Kanjos to control and just have common sense. That it's a curfew, that wear masks, social distance. I wonder why it's not very easy for us just to follow rules. And I think the political class has a responsibility because you are highly listened to and you are highly opinionated. What you say real gets hold into the minds of Kenyans. So let us use these positions of leadership to have a positive influence over the society. Let us encourage each other to follow the rule of law. Let us build a value-based system so that some of these common sense things become easy to manage. And we all know that COVID is a common sense disease. The vaccine that is going to really succeed in dealing a blow on this pandemic is common sense. If we don't embrace that, then we are going to continually suffer without. And I think finally, we need a society to renovate our culture. We need to renovate our attitude. And that is what will help in sanitizing the political parties, our political engagements. That is what will help us deal with COVID more specifically. And this really heavily weighs on the shoulders of the political leaders. Now, more specifically, on membership registration, which is a key activity, political activity going into compliance and such, I'll begin by the registrar's initiative already. There is the integrated political parties management system. I mean, that signals already that the need to move this to the digital space. And if you look at the two aspects of this integrated political parties management system by the registrar, is that it has the search and resignation aspect. It also has an aspect of uploading membership data from political parties. Maureen mentioned Kanu. I know ODM have rolled out, a digital registration. I know WIPE also have rolled out a digital registration. So there's already an opportunity to share experience. I don't think it harms for CCM to learn from Kanu's platform and improve on it, for KNC to learn from Wiper, for Jubilee also that has some form of digital registration, to learn, for Ford Kenya to learn from Jubilee, so that it can improve, because we say in politics there is no copyright. You only take it and improve it and get better. So there's already a pointer from the regulator that we need to move this into the digital space. What can we be able to do as CMD? There are opportunities for capacity building. I think it's real that we can be able to, and there are modules that exist. There are international, standards that we can look at and help political parties attune to this. But the costs of coming up with an application to do this, because of the sensitivity of the data that you want to gather and safeguard and protect, I think it's squarely the responsibility of the political parties. Some of the parties receive political parties funding, which are lucky, like ODM and Jubilee. You all collect a lot of money from Kenyans during, party primaries. I think you should put this money to good use. So beyond what partner organizations like us and the others can put in, I think it's prudent. It's important that political parties prudently apply their resources to what makes them better for consideration by the public. So thank you very much. We'll still call upon you to engage in such platforms. We'll still call upon you to move this conversation into your political party and have it with your leaders. We'll still call upon the registrar to stay with us in this conversation, and we'll still call upon the leadership of your parties to join us to lobbying the various government agencies to effect this. So thank you very much, and looking forward to further engagements on this area. Asante sana, and may you have a very restful and a good weekend. Asante.
Thank you so much, Frank. And for closing up the meeting, we can now leave at our own pleasure and leisure. Until next time, asante sana and have a lovely afternoon.